This lesson is on section 3-5, titled Solving Two-Step Equations. So when solving two-step equations, we always have to add or subtract first. This is the first thing we have to do. And then we have to divide to solve, and as always, we need to check our solution. So add it or subtract first, depending on the example. Then we're going to divide, and then we're going to check. So let's go into our first example. So we're going to solve 7 times some number, or 7v, minus 3 equals 25. So what we're doing is we're taking both concepts from the past two chapters, or past two lessons, and we're combining them together. So let's first rewrite the equation. So 7 times some number minus 3 equals 25. So we have to be really careful about how we show our work here so that we end up with the right solution. So thinking back to this, we have to add or subtract first. So do we add or do we subtract? Well, we always have to say, okay, what's going on in this problem? Well, the opposite of the operation we're given, the opposite of subtraction, is addition. So I first need to know, well, I need to isolate my variable, or I need to get the letter v or the variable b by itself. So instead of subtracting 3 from both sides like it is in the problem, we're going to add 3 to both sides of the equation to remove that minus 3. So negative 3 plus 3 cancels out to 0, so this goes away. I'm going to bring down what I haven't used. So I'm going to say 7 times v equals 25 plus 3 is 28. Now my next step is to divide to solve. Okay, so, well, I'm dividing because what I see in my original problem is multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. Again, we're always doing the opposite operation that we see. So I'm going to divide 7 to both sides of my equation. Again, when you do one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. I'm going to draw my line. 7 divided by 7 equals 1. That's getting my variable by itself. I'm going to bring down my v, and 28 divided by 7 equals 4. Now I always have to go back and check my work. So I'm going to plug in 4 back into my original equation. So I'm going to say, does 7 times 4 minus 3 equal 25? All right, well, 7 times 4 is 28. And 28 minus 3, does that equal 25? Well, yes, 25 does equal 25. So I checked my work. Again, it's always important to check your work in case you messed up somewhere in your work. So my answer is my variable v equals 4. Or 7 times 4 minus 3 will equal 25. My next example is negative 10 equals 8 plus 3 times some number, or negative 10 equals 8 plus 3x. Again, just like in my other videos, the subtraction sign is, the equal sign is just put in the front of my equation, and that's okay. It doesn't change anything about it. So my first step is to always add or subtract first. So if I'm noticing, I have a addition sign in my equation. So I'm going to realize, well, the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I know I'm going to have to subtract something from both sides first. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. Negative 10 equals 8 plus 3x. So instead of adding 8 to both sides, I'm going to subtract 8 to both sides. So that's going to get rid of my 8. So I'm going to say 8 minus 8 is 0. That's going to cross out to make my 0. I'm going to bring down what I haven't used. You don't have to bother with the adding sign because that's not going to change anything with our solution. So I'm going to bring down the 3 times x. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. And then I'm going to say negative 8 minus 8 is going to be negative 18. All right, so now I think of, okay, well, 3 times some number is going to be equal to negative 18. Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. So in order to isolate my variable to get it by itself, I need to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 equals 1, so that can cross out. So I'm going to bring down my x. I'm left with just my variable, which is my goal. And negative 8 divided by Positive 3 is going to, well, negative divided by positive is going to be a negative, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. So x is going to equal negative 6. Well, let's plug this back into my equation to make sure that I did this correctly. So I'm going to plug this right back into here. I'm going to say, does negative 10 equal 8 plus 3 times negative 10? I'm sorry, not 3 times negative 10. 3 times negative 6. Okay, so I'm going to say, well, does negative 10 equal, now following orders of operations, I need to do multiplication first. So I'm going to do this first. So I'm going to say 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. And I'm going to bring down my 8. So does 8 plus 8 negative 18 equal negative 10? Yep, and that checks out. So negative 10 does equal negative 10. So that works. Being a little messy here right now. So my answer is x equals negative 10, or x equals negative 6. My last example is 24 plus 9 times some number equals negative 3. Okay, so I always know I have to add or subtract first. And I'm always adding or subtracting the number that's not with my variable. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. So I'm going to say 24 plus 9 times some number equals negative 3. So I'm not going to worry about the number that's attached to my variable. I'm looking at the number that's not. So I know the opposite of adding is subtracting, so I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. 24 minus 24 is going to be 0, so that cancels out. I'm going to bring down my 9 times some number, or 9x. Negative 3 plus negative 24 is going to be negative 27. The opposite of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by 9. This crosses out to make 1. So then I'm left with x. I'm going to bring down my x equals, well, a negative divided by positive is a negative. 27 divided by 9 is 3. So right now I have x equals negative 3. Now I need to go back and check my answer. I'm going to plug in negative 3 back into my equation. So I'm going to say, does 24 plus 9 times negative 3 equal negative 3? So let's follow orders of operation. 9 times negative 3, well, a positive times a negative is a negative. 9 times 3 is 27. I'm going to bring down my 24. So I'm going to say, does 24 plus negative 27 equal negative 3? And 24 plus negative 27 does equal negative 3, so that my answer checks out. So x does equal negative 3. And that brings me to the end of the lesson on solving two-step equations.